you guys. Welcome to day 2 of your interest group. This is for tea time and chill and chat. Today we will be talking about the history of tea, and during the live session we will be having a Kahoot, so you might want to pay attention. Alright, the origins of tea. This will be a timeline, actually, just to let you guys know. The origins of tea. Archaeological evidence suggests tea was first cultivated in China as early as 6,000 years ago. Tea becomes a drink. The original Chinese tea plant is the same type that's grown around the world today, yet it was originally consumed very differently. It was eaten as a vegetable or cooked with grain porridge. Tea only shifted from food to drink 1,500 years ago when people realized that a combination of heat and moisture could create a complex and varied taste out of the leafy green. After hundreds of years of variations to the preparation method, the standard became to heat tea, pack it into portable cakes, grind it into powder, mix with hot water, and create a beverage called matcha or matcha. Matcha became so popular that a distinct Chinese tea culture emerged. Tea in Japan. In the 9th century, during the Tang Dynasty, a Japanese monk brought the first tea plant to Japan. The Japanese eventually developed their own unique rituals around tea, leading to the creation of the Japanese tea ceremony. Loose leaf tea. In the 14th century, during the Ming Dynasty, the Chinese emperor shifted the standard from tea pressed into cakes to loose leaf tea. The tea trade. At this point, China still held a virtual monopoly on the world's tea trees, making tea one of the 3 essential Chinese export goods, along with porcelain and silk. This gave China a great deal of power and economic influence as tea drinking spread around the world. Tea in the West, Europe. In 1610, the Dutch East India Company imported the first shipments of Chinese tea to Western shores, marketing it to rich people as an exotic medicinal drink. In 1650, tea parties became a trendy social event among Western women. Men were mad because tea was considered a man's drink, which we all know is not true, because women and men are equal. Okay, y'all. So we can look over that again. You could always skip around in the video. And so that was just the minimum. Feel free to please do your own research on that portion. So, as I stated, we will be having a Kahoot session. And during the live session, I believe we will be having our tea. Okay, y'all. Now I'm going to let this go over to Hannah.
Hi, everyone. It's Hannah. I've got my tea, and I am here to pick up right where Savannah left off, talking about the history of tea. So you guys know that tea made its way over to the Western world, to Europe, and now we're going to talk about how it made its way to Britain and the influence that it had from there. So in 1664, the English East India Company brought tea to the British king and queen, and they liked it so much that not too long after that, it became a regular part of the daily life in Britain. It became a part of the culture there. And at this point in history, Britain was expanding a lot. They had colonies around the world. They were making new colonies, and their influence in Europe was growing and growing. So as Britain grew, so did the interest in tea. And by 1700, tea in Europe was sold at 10 times the price as coffee, and it was still only grown in China. And we have proof that by 1765 in the American colonies, tea was by far the most favored drink there. It was their favorite drink of any other drink in the American colonies. But then they dumped it in a harbor, which is what we're talking about next. So the Boston Tea Party. This is a big event in history because it's one of the things that led to the American Revolution. So you might have learned about it already, or maybe you haven't and you will eventually. But I'm going to give you a quick summary, not too much details, but just a little bit about what happened in Boston. So the British colonists living in America in protest of British tea taxes, so the money that they were charged to buy tea and a lot of other things, in what became known as the Boston Tea Party, because colonists dressed up as Native Americans and they boarded the East India Company ships and unloaded just hundreds of chests of tea into the harbor, and this was called Tea Party. That's what we refer to it now. And these tea parties didn't just happen in Boston. They actually happened in a lot of cities like Philadelphia, New York, Maine, North Carolina, and Maryland, all the way to 1774 as a form of protesting the British government's taxation on the colonies, because they didn't have representation, and without representation, shouldn't have taxation, which you'll learn a lot about in history. But that is a big part of history that has tea in it, which is really interesting. Now, just because tea got dumped into a harbor didn't mean that the interest in it went down. Tea was super popular, even in the colonies still, and the tea trade was really lucrative. It got a lot of money. So there was a lot of demand for it, and European countries, they wanted to have control of the tea trade. So this created a race for tea. Who could get tea, who could get control of it, and who could make all that money off of it first. So actually, the world's fastest sailboat, which is called the Clipper, was born out of this race for tea, which I think is really, really interesting. Because in around the 1840s, because different Western trading companies all wanted to get their hands on tea before the other ones, they created this ship, the Clipper, the fastest sailboat, to bring tea back to Europe and be the first to maximize their profits on it. So that's where we get the fastest sailboat. So we know that tea was really lucrative. You could get a lot of money from it. And Britain really, really wanted control over tea. And remember that it was only being made in China still. So the British East India Company, they wanted to be able to grow tea themselves, because if they could grow it, they could control it, they could control the trade, they could make more money. They wanted to have control of the market. So they commissioned a botanist named Robert Fortune to steal tea from China. And this was like a covert operation to steal this tea, and he disguised himself. And he took a perilous journey through China's mountainous tea regions, and eventually he actually smuggled tea trees, and he took them to India, where with experienced tea workers, and from there they grew the plants, and it spread further and further, helping drive the tea trade and its growth as just a daily commodity. Now remember, Britain does have control of India here, so that's why it was taken to India. And there's a lot more in the history of tea from this point forward. A lot of different ways to drink tea, a lot of different cultures developing different rituals around it, a lot of advancements in how it was shipped and packaged and traded and things like that. But we're going to skip forward and talk about how we got the tea bag. So tea bags, which is how most of us think of tea today, was actually a happy accident. In New York, a tea importer named Thomas Sullivan invented tea bags when he decided to send tea to his clients in little small silk bags as a way to package the tea. He didn't intend for them to be tea bags, it was just a packaging of loose tea. But his clients, they didn't really know what to do with the silk bags, so they just decided to put it in the hot water, and it actually worked to steep the tea with the loose tea in the bag. And from that point on, he came up with the idea of marketing it as a tea bag, and from there we get advancements, and eventually the tea bags we're familiar with today. So that's how we got to where we are, and tea has a really, really cool history. It's definitely complex. It's definitely a lot more than what Savannah and I could cover today. But I hope that you enjoyed this little history, and I hope that you learned something and found it interesting, because I definitely did find it really interesting. And today, Tea is actually the second most consumed beverage in the world after water. So tea still has a huge impact on us, and it's the second most consumed beverage. And there's lots of different kinds of teas, like I said, lots of different cultures drink tea in different ways, and it's really meaningful to a lot of people. Before we go, I want to touch on our Bible verse for today, which was 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 18, which you heard in the morning news. And this Bible verse really talks about how we are made new in Christ. We are new creations when we choose to believe in Jesus and accept God. And I think this ties into our video today about tea, because tea has a really wild history. There were a lot of things done over tea that were bad mistakes, wars fought. It just has a deep history, and it kind of reminds me of people. People have histories, and all of our histories are different, and sometimes we do things that we're not proud of. But by being made new in God, all of these things that we've done in our past are forgiven. Our wife's clean. We are a new creation in Him. And I think that that's really powerful and really freeing. And I want you guys to know that whatever your history is, you are clean in God's sight. You are made free in His sight, and He loves you. And there is absolutely nothing in the world that you could do that would separate you from His love. As long as you just take that step to believe in Him, your past is just past, and you can move forward in freedom. And I think that's really amazing. So I am gonna go ahead and go, and I hope to see you guys at the live sessions. If not, I hope that you enjoy this video, and I'll hopefully see you later. Bye guys.